Hey, welcome back to the shop. So today we're doing a little bit of preventative maintenance on this L400. We're going to do the rear diff, the transfer case, and the front diff fluids. Now this van doesn't really need it. The fluid's in fairly good condition already, but it's going to be doing a pretty big trip down to the Baja pretty soon, so this is just preventative and for peace of mind. Now if you have an L300, the service is exactly the same, at least method-wise. You might just be using some different fluids. I believe the transfer case uses a different fluid, but don't hold me to that. Do your own research before you do it. So I'm going to run through this with you. It should be a pretty quick video, and this is something you can do in your own driveway with a set of jack stands, some basic hand tools, and maybe just a transfer pump. Okay, so here we are under the back of the van. You have to bear with me, it's a little bit cramped here. This van's actually so tall I can't get my lift up to its first locks, so I got a lift to put the van on jack stands still, believe it or not. But we're going to start with the rear diff here, and if you look at your rear diff, you're going to see that there are two plugs on it. One on the side, one on the back. The one on the side is for draining, the one on the back is for filling. So we're going to take a 24mm socket, crack this loose, and then we'll get our drain pan underneath. Make sure you keep your socket seated on that. It's very thin and it's very easy for the socket to walk off and around it. If you round that bolt off, you're going to have a real hard time getting it out. So don't forget to keep an eye on the oil when it's draining out. You want to make sure you don't see any chunks coming out, or if it comes out extremely silver, that might mean that you've got some internal issues going on in your diff. The drain plug is going to have a magnet on the end of it, and that magnet is there to collect metal filings. If you see a bunch of fuzz on it, don't worry, that's normal. That's the magnet doing its job. There should be a little bit of fuzz on it. There is wear and tear on the diff while you're driving. It's just the nature of the diff. If you see big chunks of metal on it, or a big chunk of what looks like a tooth from the diff, well then you've got problems. But a little bit of fuzz, a little bit of silver on here, that's nothing abnormal. Once the fluid has stopped coming out and you've cleaned off the magnet, you can go ahead and replace that drain plug. If you have a new seal, go ahead and replace it right now. Unfortunately, we don't have one, so we're gonna have to make do with what's on here. Don't forget to sufficiently tighten it down again, keeping that socket nice and level. Make sure it's tight, but don't kill it. Once we've got the drain in, we can go ahead and remove the fill plug from the back. Now the fluid we're going to be using for the front and rear differential is 80/90 weight GL5. For the transfer case, we're going to be using 75/90 GL4. There's a few ways to get the fluid into the diff. You can use a suction gun, a transfer pump, or if you don't have either of those, you can just take the top off, lop it off here, stick it in, and squeeze. The problem, as you can see, it's very hard to get all of the fluid out of the bottle doing it this method. So you can sometimes just slide a piece of vinyl tubing over the end and hold it up above, but a transfer pump or some kind of transfer device does make doing this job a little bit easier. Okay, so now we're ready to put the fluid into the diff, and you'll notice I have a drain pan underneath the fill hole. The reason for that is there's no dipstick or anything in differential. The way you tell it's full is when the fluid starts coming back out the fill port. So make sure you've got something underneath to catch the fluid when it starts to spill out. Well. Okay, so I got a little bit overzealous with my fill tool and blew up the entire bottle of 8090 at about 90 psi. So now that I've had a shower, changed all my clothing, and spent 2 hours cleaning up the walls, floor, undercarriage of the vehicle, and my lift, we're done the rear diff. So, we're gonna repeat some of the process on the front diff, hopefully not the blowing up the bottle part, and then we'll do the same thing on the T case as well. The only difference on the T case is we're going to use a GL4 fluid instead of a GL5. So, there's still oil everywhere. Yeah, don't blow up 80-90 bottles at 90 psi. It makes a bit of a mess. Now all that's left is the transfer case. So just like the differentials, there's a fill port and a drain port. Fill port's on the back, right about halfway up the T case, and the drain port's on the side over here. So we're just gonna crack that loose, drain the fluid out, and then, as I said earlier, we'll be using GL4 for the T case instead of GL5. So you can see there's a little bit more in way of filings on the magnet in the T case. Again, that is normal, but looks like this fluid hasn't been changed as recently as the differentials have been. Now the fill procedure is exactly the same as the differentials, front and rear, but we will be using a GL4 fluid here in 75-90 weight instead of 80-90, and that's pretty much the only difference.